Good morning. I'm Lucy Beadnell. I'm the Director of Advocacy here at the ARC of Northern Virginia, and I do a lot of our work on supported decision making, legal authority, all kinds of those sorts of options. I'm happy to talk with you all today about the basics of supported decision making to delve a little bit into what that looks like and how to use it. Our presentation today is recorded, so feel free to watch this again at any time. If you are watching the recording and you have follow-up questions or you need a version of the slides, anytime you can go to the arcofnova.org. And if you go to the upper right hand of the screen, there's a yellow or orange rectangle, depending upon whether or not you're hovering over it, that says help. If you click on that help rectangle, all the questions go to me. And just feel free to ask a question, ask for the slides, ask for whatever it is that you need, and we're happy to accommodate. I'm going to dive in here with the caveat that this presentation stemmed from a grant in 2018, 19, and 20 that we did with the Burton Blatt Institute from Syracuse University and Virginia Board for People with Disabilities, though it's evolved over the last several years. Today, we're going to talk about some of the basics of supported decision making. What is it? How would one do it? What happens if someone has a lot of support needs, if this doesn't go well, those sorts of things. We're going to talk about how you can start to put your own supported decision-making plan into place and to adjust it over time. We'll give some examples of folks who are using it, and then we'll share some resources, and then we'll take questions. So please feel free to chat questions in where it says Q&A on your screen anytime, and we should have time to get to all of those and more today. So at its basic, supported decision-making is something that we all do pretty much every day. That just means you get help to understand and make your choices. So as an example, I'll say a couple of weeks ago in my family, my car was no longer safe for my family to drive in, so we had to get a new one. And this isn't something we do very often. We run our cars till the wheels fall off. And so when we were doing this, I asked other people who had cars like the one that I was interested in getting, what they thought about the brand, what they thought about different types of vehicles. I looked at car websites and got guidance from there. I talked to my dad, who's a big car person and knows a lot about options. That was me using supported decision making. The choice on what car to get ultimately fell to me, but I was gathering information and getting input from sources that I knew and trusted to help me understand my choices and make those choices. And that's the same thing that pretty much anybody does in every culture, right? In a lot of cases, that's informal, just what I talked about. I decided I wanted to go get help, so I sought out these sources. If someone has a lot of decision-making support needs, maybe because of a developmental disability, we may decide, let's do this a little more formally. Let's write a plan out for how we're going to do this. Let's have a regular team of people with whom we consult. Let's do this on a regular basis, right? Let's just make this part of our everyday routine and write down how we're going to do that to make sure it's supporting us in decisions that are big and small every single day. And one of the things that I think is so amazing about supported decision making is that it can significantly change someone's capacity. What do I mean by that? I'll use myself again as an example. I'll be in the hot seat a lot today. I pay the bills and manage the money in our family. I couldn't do that if you put me in a room by myself with a stranger and said, Lucy, come up with a plan to do all of this. I do talk with people who are good at saving money. I do talk with people on our ARC of Northern Virginia 401k team or 403b in our case. I do talk with my mom's financial advisor and my uncle who's really good at investing money. I do use spreadsheets and calculators and all kinds of other tools and auto pay on bills so I don't forget them and auto direct deposits and all kinds of other tools that help make me successful. So sometimes we have someone with a disability who we put in the room with a stranger, a psychologist or a psychiatrist, another service professional, and we say, okay, this person who doesn't know you and doesn't know how you best communicate and has no relationship with you is going to ask you a bunch of questions. We're going to use the answers to those questions to give an IQ score and a diagnosis and figure out what you can and can't do. I would make the argument no one is their best selves in those situations. That's not how we ever treat typically developing adults. We don't take away all supports and tools and put them in a high stress situation and say, if you can't perform perfectly right now, we're taking away your right to ever understand or be part of these own decisions in your life, because it wouldn't work. because we all need help to understand and make choices. So when I talk about supported decision-making changing someone's capacity, what I mean is when we give people help to do things, they can do more things, right? It's that simple idea that when we all have help, yeah, sure, maybe we can't move all the furniture in our house on our own, but if we hired movers and packed some of the boxes ourselves and called in friends and family, we could do it as a team, even though it's our house and our stuff and the decision is ultimately ours. So we're going to talk about how to do that today. I will start off by saying supported decision making, I feel like, is an important tool for every single person on the planet. Like I've talked about with examples about my own life, if you don't have a specific developmental disability or mental health diagnosis, you still need help to understand and make choices. There's just no one who's an expert on everything all the time throughout life. A lot of people with developmental disabilities fall in this sort of middle category on our screen, meaning they need a little or maybe even a lot of help to understand or make choices. And that amount of help that we need, how that person communicates, is really what's going to determine what's our plan going to look like. If the person needs a little help, then we're going to set up systems for them to get a little bit of help. If they need a lot of help, we'll set up a bigger team. We'll set up bigger systems to get them more help. We'll meet people where they are. I also want to highlight that some folks exploring this idea already have or are moving toward the idea of a limited or a full guardianship. Guardianship permanently removes the rights of the adult with a disability to legally make choices about their life and removes a lot of their civil rights as well. That doesn't mean they don't have ideas and input and feedback on what's important to them. So I would say, even if someone has a legal guardian, supported decision-making is such an important tool because the job of the guardian is not to say, I read an article that said we should all be eating half a plate of vegetables at each meal and these kinds of things, so that's what this person's going to eat, right? We're not making some objectively right decision. The job of guardians is to know that individual well, take what's important to them, their culture, their preferences, their history, all those kinds of things into consideration in either making decisions for that person or helping that decision implement those choices, right? So even as guardians, we should be working in the realm of supported decision making, engaging that person with a disability as much as possible, recognizing that for some folks, we have yet to find a way to effectively communicate choices in and get answers back out. I would like to think that in my lifetime, with all the very amazing technology that's coming along, that won't be the case for but so long. But if we are working with someone who really we haven't found a way yet to get a question like, where do you want to live? We're going to tour these apartments. We'll highlight the pros and cons of each. And even after doing that in an accommodating way, we don't have a sense of what this person likes and wants. Well, then maybe we do need a guardian. Maybe we need someone who's going to be responsible for making those legal kinds of decisions instead of the person with a disability because we don't yet have a way for them to do it. But the guardian's not going to dismiss the thoughts and preferences of the person with a disability. They're just going to take them into account in a different way. So this is all to say supported decision making is really for everyone, and it's going to adjust based upon the individual that's involved. So how might this work? Let's give some examples. So one of the tools that I really like for supported decision making is a document called When Do I Want Supports that looks at a bunch of areas of life, like those on the screen: finances, medical, education, transportation, employment, you name it, right? Many, 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 many things are on there. And it says in these areas, do I need any kind of support? Yes or no? If I do, what kind of support do I need? I need someone doing this with me. I need someone to prep me before I go into meetings. I need the information to be adapted into plain language or with pictures, whatever that is, right? And then who's going to help me? Could be one person or many people. So from a document like that, a supported decision-making plan starts to build itself. So if we look at the financial area of someone's life and we say, yeah, this is an area where we need some help, then the question becomes, how do we get that help? What tools do we need? And some really common examples maybe someone has money that they're going to inherit. Maybe they got a big back payment from Social Security or earned a lot of money at work that they'd saved up that they need to put into a special needs trust. And then we can say, okay, Well, then the job of a special needs trust is to make sure the money that person has is spent legally and ethically, doesn't jeopardize any of their benefits, that we've got tax statements that we can report on each year, all of those kinds of things. So that's our supporting tool, the special needs trust team that we have. And maybe each month this person has money coming in from Social Security in addition to earned income from work, or maybe it's just Social Security benefits. And maybe we say, this person's strengths aren't bill paying. They're not a numbers cruncher and a count the pennies kind of individual. So we're going to have someone whose job it is to take that monthly Social Security income and pay for the necessities, the rent, the food, the transportation, the activity fees, all those other kinds of things that we have going on. So we say, okay, that's what our plan looks like in the financial realm. We've got a special needs trust that manages that big money that we saved or inherited. We've got a rep payee that manages the day-to-day money. Now let's look at the medical side of things. Maybe this person needs someone to go to doctor's appointments with them, to be jointly notified about appointment reminders, test results, for the doctor to be able to talk to both people and help explain things, right? So then maybe we say, in the medical realm, that tells us the tool we need is a power of attorney that would allow someone to do this along with the person with a disability. They're not saying the person with a disability can't talk to the doctor anymore. They can't consent to their own medications. They can't give input. They're saying, you're going to need someone to help you. Let's figure out who that is. Is it a parent, a sibling, a family friend, a neighbor, whoever it is that this person knows and trusts? And maybe we also say, and an accommodation that's really helpful for us is a physical chart of the human body. And so when we go into the doctor's office, we can point. We can make notes ahead of time. We can point on the body for where we would feel side effects, where we're feeling pain, where we're feeling good right now, all those other kinds of things. So that person's supported decision-making plan in the medical realm may say, I've got a power of attorney to help me with the heavy-duty things, and I'm using a chart of the human body. And I'm always going to work with these practitioners in the office who are really good at communicating with me, right? Is this starting to make sense? This is my plan. This is how I'm going to do each of these things and the tools I'll use. And then we'll look at education. So maybe that is, yeah, like my son, maybe someone can participate in writing their own special education plan, but they do better with that if we say, we need an accommodation where a draft plan is sent home days in advance. Or we never sign an IEP at the meeting. We always take it home and think about it for a day or two, work through some real world examples, take some time to process before we give consent. Those are examples of accommodations that you could use to help this person understand and make their choices. And maybe you say, we still want mom, dad, or whoever to be able to help sign that IEP, help sign, not take the place of. This person's an adult. We want them to be able to go to IEP meetings, even though this person's 18 or 19 or in their transition years. So we'll have a special education power of attorney that says mom, dad, whoever we chose, can keep coming to these meetings, can keep being notified, can keep helping adapt information, and keep working with this person. So in your supported decision-making plan in each area of life, you're going to figure out who's going to help me and what tools are they going to use to do that. We have a document at thearcofnova.org. If you go across the top, there's a little orange ribbon that says resources, and then you select resource library. There's a massive online resource library page completely devoted to supported decision making. It'll have recordings from webinars like this, but also documents like this one on the screen. The document on the screen is actually part of a 3-page guide that's called 100 Ways to Use Supported Decision Making. And it really is designed to give you some ideas and inspiration in how in various areas of life you can get help to understand and make your choices, because this plan, much like an IEP itself, is going to look different for everyone. So if we talk about supported decision making in housing, for example, we can say, is that a power of attorney who helps you go tour apartments, helps you sign on the lease, and is working through things with you? Maybe they also get notified of the blast emails the landlord sends out when they say things like, oh, here are the days the lawn's being mowed, the light bulbs are being changed, whatever, so that they can help give a reminder. Maybe this person with a disability is not great at checking their emails or understanding from these emails what they're supposed to do, so we get a helper. Or maybe we tell the landlord, if you need to tell me something, the best way to communicate with me is not through email. I do really well with letters, texts, in-person meetings. Can I stop by once a week for 10 minutes at the landlord's office and check in? Whatever that looks like. Those are examples of supported decision making. You can have someone you trust to help you meet neighbors. Almost always when we hear of people with disabilities having tension or conflict with the neighbor didn't understand that the person had a disability or didn't understand what it meant that this person had a disability. Maybe they understood this person had autism, but they weren't drawing the connection between that diagnosis and why this person would leave mail in the hall or be up over the course of the night or those other kinds of things, right? But building relationships with neighbors, getting on the apartment complex or condo complex or neighborhood listserv, Facebook page, whatever, can help build those relationships and help you find a good team of people who are going to support and accommodate you and what you need. We all need that, goodness. Maybe you've got a supporter who helps you shop at Goodwill to buy used furniture or the buy nothing pages on Facebook, right? Maybe you've got someone who helped you write your Medicaid waiver service plan to include supports you're going to get in housing, right? Maybe you've got a supporter to help you ask for housing accommodations with your landlord. Maybe you've got someone who helps you set up auto debits for your utilities. You can have someone help you write a housing resume. Maybe you're a first-time renter, the landlord's a little leery. You can have someone help you write a little one-page letter that explains why you're actually a great renter and why you'd be a pleasure to have in this apartment unit. You can have a team member who helps you identify the staff that keep you safely in housing, someone who can set up your cleanup. If you need a cleaning service or someone to come in on a regular basis, all those kinds of things. Again, this is just a document of 100 different ideas on, in these areas of life, support may look like this. And if this resonates with you, write it down. And if this sparks an idea about something completely different that would be helpful to you, write that down. Start using that as a tool to build your plan. Now, why do we do this? Hopefully, as we've been talking, some things came to mind about why we'd want to do this. But if we just look at the data, we have now data going back to the 1970s that say the more we increase self-determination, control over one's own life, for people with disabilities in particular, the safer the person becomes and the better their quality of life. And as a mom, I don't know that there's much that I want more for my kids than their safety and having a really good quality of life. Supported decision-making, self-determination, I'll use those terms more or less interchangeably here, is about increasing independence. We are giving someone a chance to fall and get up, to learn the hard way. Sometimes it's okay to make a mistake and to try again. I have yet to meet an 18-year-old newly minted adult of any ability who I feel like, wow, you are so smart and you have so much life experience that I don't worry you're ever going to make a mistake. You're never going to eat too much. You're never going to drink too much. You're never going to rack up too much debt. You're never going to get in a bad relationship. Of course not. 18-year-old brains, like most brains for a long time, are not fully formed. It's life experiences. It's overspending and realizing what it means to not be able to buy the things we wanted or to have to pick up extra shifts at work that help teach us those lessons along the way. And for adults without disabilities, we usually don't think anything of that. Oh, I did the same thing when I was their age. Or, oh, I still am notorious for overeating when I'm stressed. Or, oh, I still do these kinds of things, right? These are grace that we give people all the time. Just what it means to be an adult. We're allowed to make some bad choices. It's part of our culture. And some of those bad choices teach us things and shape who we're going to be. We want to make sure we're giving that very same grace to people with disabilities who may sometimes catch on quicker, but maybe they need to make that mistakes more times. Maybe they need to have someone who they love and trust help direct them through making the connection between the consequence and the action and then saying, did this feel good? What can we do so this doesn't happen again? Right? To really help them through that process. It doesn't mean they can't get there, of course. It means we're accommodating them. We're supporting them in learning from their mistakes and learning how to be a successful, independent adult. As a civil rights nonprofit, I would be remiss not to mention that one of the benefits of supported decision-making is because it increases someone's capacity, right? We're giving them tools and a support network so they can do more. We often then don't need to use really heavy-handed tools like guardianship that are very expensive, very restrictive, and very, very hard to remove and change. And those are options that have lifelong consequences. And I feel like parents are often told as their loved one is turning or approaching 18, oh, you should put guardianship in place. And given false information about the benefits of doing so. It will keep them safer. It will stop them from doing this. It will allow you to control this. Usually it doesn't do those kinds of things. But then we get calls often from parents who are aging and they say, well, who's going to pay to go to court and to do all these guardianship filings and all this guardianship work when I'm not here? And the answer that I have to give is, well, who have you trained to do that? Is it another family member or friend or neighbor who's willing to step into that role? Because if not, we've got a really miserable situation where the person with the disability has been told, you have no right to make your choices, and we don't have anyone to help them. They're in limbo, right? They don't have anyone who can help them make and implement those choices. They can't do it themselves. And that's a situation in which we never want to put a loved one. That's the utmost of danger. And one of the other benefits of supported decision making is you don't need an attorney to do supported decision making. We'll talk through some other resources and options, but generally speaking, this can be done for free or very, very low cost. And this using the same kinds of tools that I talked about, right? Are we already setting up a special needs trust? Well, then we'll use that. Are we able to use free powers of attorney online that we customize? Are we able to take language from books that I'll mention and things like the ARC's website that we can use to set this up? Then great. Then we've got a tool that's ready to go and can be changed at no cost over time if we need to. I did want to note that the National Guardianship Association and Virginia law are incredibly firm and consistent on saying always try supported decision making first and in earnest. Do every single thing you can to implement options that preserve rights and promote self-determination, control over your own life, that remove reliance on one person, usually a parent, and place it on a team that can help support each other. And whereas then if you lose one team member, the whole thing doesn't fall apart, right? This is a great idea for people with disabilities. All data kind of backs this up. And we don't want to dismiss the idea of supported decision making because it's going to involve more work up front, or it's a different way of thinking, or because we have a misguided attempt to try and overprotect someone, which as a parent, I fight. Okay, so then we usually have lots of questions about what if something bad happens? So let's talk through some of that. The honest reality is everyone's vulnerable, like we talked about. All new adults and all well into adults struggle. They're going to make bad choices sometimes. It's not realistic for us as parents, as people with disabilities, as anyone to think, we're never going to let that happen to so-and-so. Nothing bad is ever going to happen to them. So we have to swallow the honesty pill that is, yep, we're all vulnerable. Someone with a disability by nature may be more vulnerable. So we'll offer in more layers of support. But you don't usually build safety and build support for someone by removing their rights and control over their own life, right? There's never been a study that showed by virtue of having guardianship, someone was safer or fared better in life. Guardianship is a set of documents that says this person doesn't have the ability to give legal consent to their own choices anymore. As my law partner who did this grant with us originally used to say, it is neither a suit of armor to protect someone from bad things, nor is it a chastity belt to prevent them from making their own choices. It is a paper document. And so if someone is going to go out and do something, that paper document isn't going to, jump around and wrestle them back into good choices. We need to have a real understanding of what that is. Whereas supported decision making builds a team and builds on the strengths of that team so that maybe if the person with a disability gets annoyed at one or two team members, we've got some other folks who can step in for a while and still help serve that individual. We are helping to teach more independence and teach ways to make better choices, knowing that we all survive that. So if we talk about supported decision making, this is a concept, right? The idea that I'm going to get help to do something. If you asked me how to implement a concept, that could be very different from one person to another. But I'll tell you what we usually advise families to do. First, assess your needs. Documents like those that I talked about, and I'll give links to them that say, do I need help in this area? What kind of help? Who helps? Right? Starting to get some of those ideas on paper. This is really overwhelming, I think, to take a look at for the first time, but having a tool that's written to sort of walk you through it, for my mind, helps me make sure I'm covering all the bases and doing things correctly. and then start exploring. Like I said, we have a huge supported decision-making library, like a whole web page that is a library in and of itself devoted to supported decision-making. It's webinars exclusively on financial or educational or medical decisions. It's examples of stories of people who've used this. It's documents you can use to duplicate. It's all kinds of things, right? So gather your information. You figure out the way that this resonates with you, that this works for you or for your team, and then start building, right? Okay, I understand what this is and that I need help. Next, who's going to do that helping? Who are people who I know have expertise in this area? And to some degree, those may be paid people. What do I mean by that? Let's say we talk again about financial supports. Maybe this person has a special needs trust. Well, special needs trusts usually have fees associated with them. So in terms of who helps me with financial choices, my special needs trust team. They're paid for by the fees I have to use this trust anyway. And they're going to help me understand if spending this money is something I can afford to meet with my long-term goals, if this is something that, excuse me, uh, I can do that won't jeopardize my benefits, right? Those should be people who are helping you navigate those kinds of choices. Maybe it's your doctor. Maybe it's your financial advisor, the nurse practitioner in your office, your teacher, your whoever it is, your job coach, right? It can be job titles, it can be organization names. You might have a bunch of people in that financial supports category. And I think it's nice to have a mix of paid and unpaid people. We usually pay people in our lives like doctors, nurses, job coaches, financial advisors, etc., because they're literal experts in the field, right? We would want to include them on this team. We want someone who we know in our doctor's office is always so patient with us and is always good at explaining things to us and always takes the extra time we need. That would be our supporter in that realm. We would certainly ideally also want a family member, a friend, a neighbor, etc., who can go and give opinions based upon what they know about us as a person outside of the medical realm to work those things together. So once you sign and get an idea, then you'll start putting this on paper. I'll give examples of supported decision-making agreements that are essentially fill in the blank that will walk you through how do you fill this out and write this down. You can write your own agreement if you wanted, or you can take what exists and revamp it a little bit and customize it. But I think it's nice to start with some words that someone else already wrote on a page to get us going. And that should help direct you through, okay, I see where I need supports. What does that look like? Is it a power of attorney, a do with document? So someone can go with me, be notified with me, sign with me. Is it a trust, a representative payee? Is it a reasonable accommodation request? Is it whatever? What are those other tools? And let's start working that plan. And then every couple of months, let's sit down and talk. What are some big decisions and small decisions I made recently? Did I ask for help from my supporters? Did I have the right tool? And if I did, great. And if not, how do we revamp that, right? Supported decision-making documents should be dynamic, nimble. They should move with the person with a disability who's going to have changing needs as they move into adulthood and gain more skills and more experience, or as they reach their later years and we're seeing a cognitive decline or increase in medical support needs, those kinds of things. Well, that's a good time to look at the supported decision-making agreement and beef up the support you have in those areas. I'm going to reference some tools in specific that are in our library, but I really want to draw your attention to them because I think they're so helpful. One is an article called Setting the Wheels in Motion. It was written by a woman named Suzanne Francisco. She's a mom to 3 children with developmental disabilities, now all adults, who have very different diagnoses and needs. And the article is her parent-to-parent perspective on why she opted for supported decision-making for all of her kiddos, and then worksheets that she created for her own family on how to get going. And as a mom, I feel like that parent-to-parent perspective is helpful and very realistic and relatable. We had some people who just walked in with notes on paper or on a spreadsheet or whatever, like, that's fine too. If you are a doodler, if as we're going along today, you're making notes in the margin of the notebook in front of you, great, start with that. The tool that I like most is that When Do I Want Support guide from the ACLU. Like I said, because it's just so simple. This area, do I need support, who and how? And to really get ideas going. And then I like, because I am middle-aged, to print it out and to literally write on it. And then I've yet to work with a family who filled it out without saying, and then 5 minutes later, 1 day later, a week later, I realized we should add so-and-so. We should add so-and-so. This other person knows about these realms of life. My child really respects and works with this person very well. So once we sort of have in our mind what we need, our mental filing cabinets open up there, and we're going to start realizing we have bigger teams than we realize and more supporters. And like I said, you want to balance on that list of people who are paid, organizations, providers, etc., who are always going to be in that role because they're paid, and actual individuals who know and love and care about the person with a disability. For some background, I mentioned that this presentation was originally drafted as part of a grant. That grant included us working really closely with 10 individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities over a year and a half. They were between 18 and 40, a mix of needs, of diagnoses, of genders, of ages, etc. And over the course of that year and a half, our job was to say, let's help you create a supported decision-making plan, build a team, and then work that plan. Let's see how we do. And by interesting timing, we started this grant and really building these teams in 2019, meaning we went through the pandemic with folks and adapted. Oh, goodness, life changed for all of us very quickly. Is this team working? Are they helping to support you? And over the course of the time in this grant, many of those people moved out into their own apartment. People started developing new independent skills. And when we did exit interviews, we found out that 10 people in the grant, every single one of them said supported decision-making, this lens, this way of thinking, this process is a very valuable tool, and we're going to keep at it. Of the 10 people who entered the grant, 5 had already in place some version of guardianship, full or limited when they started. 4 of those 5 at the end of the grant said, we want to move away from that. We did that because we were told to. We did that because we thought it was the only option. But I see that it's limiting us now and it's going to limit us later. This option of supported decision-making is better for us. And so some folks are now going through the process of removing those guardianships. And for everyone, we started working as a team. How do we get out of the mindset of this is a little child who needs us all the time to we are growing an adult? How do we do everything we can to foster what independence and success looks like for them? How do we take the dreams and wishes that they have, like it's a little visual here on the tips of my fingers, and relate all of the things we have to do in terms of getting toward those goals? So if what we really want is to live in our own apartment, that means we've got to talk with someone each week about paying our bills. That means we've got to learn to keep our space clean because a landlord can come in and kick you out if you've got critters crawling around and you're not keeping things clean. That means we've got to learn to take showers and clean up in the kitchen and do all these other kinds of things independently because it's part of living on your own. We are going to get you to your goals. We're going to draw a direct line from the things you've got to do to the things you want to do, and we're going to help you along the way. So it was really incredibly meaningful and powerful. We had the most beautiful messages from people with disabilities in the grant who used the term empowered over and over again. I feel listened to like I never have. I feel empowered. These are people who spoke with letter boards, people who spoke with other communication devices, some people who spoke with spoken language, and lots of messages from parents who expressed a tremendous sense of relief. I didn't realize that building a team was possible. I didn't realize how capable my child was. I didn't realize how much as a parent I default to making and implementing decisions for my loved one, because I always have, versus what it would be like to start giving them the opportunity to make those decisions. And they could do a lot more than I thought. And those skills built pretty quickly. So I'm going to walk through as we close out here on the formal part of the presentation, some of the resources in our supported decision-making library, and then I'll pivot to questions. So please feel free to start chatting in questions, and I'll get to those in just a second. In our supported decision-making library at thearcofnova.org, again, go to resources, resource library, and then choose supported decision-making. Like I said, lots of videos, presentations, handouts, etc. You can ask us questions. There's a National Resource Center on Supported Decision-Making that has samples of agreements on supported decision-making from around the country, other stories and videos of people who are using it, if that's how you learn best and that resonates with you. The National Center for Public Representation talks about laws, agreements, other kinds of tools used around the country so you can get a sense of things. The Disability Law Center of Virginia has a free online power of attorney builder that will help you craft documents like powers of attorney that'll say, who's going to help me when and how. They can also give some help with advanced directives, those documents that say, if I'm no longer able to make my own medical decisions, I do or don't want to be taken care of when I'm in a coma. I do or don't want life-saving measures. I do or don't want, right? Something that I would say any adult should have, an advanced directive. They can help people with disabilities, right? There's a book that I love, cleverly called Supported Decision Making. And it's written by an attorney named Jonathan Martinez and his partner, Peter Blanc. Jonathan Martinez is the attorney who worked with us on the grant that I've been alluding to several times today. And he wrote that book in what I would call family-friendly language. It's not legalese. It really is meant to be understandable for people with disabilities and their families, and to give examples of specific language and accommodations you can ask for in powers of attorney. Your Rights, The History of Supported Decision Making. I think it's a really wonderful read. You can get on Amazon, in hard copy or digital, and just a great tool for really understanding what supported decision making means. The article Setting the Wheels in Motion by the mom I mentioned is there. There's a DC-based group called the Jenny Hatch Justice Project that talks about how supported decision making really began in the U.S. in earnest in Virginia, in a case by a woman named Jenny Hatch. She was in the Virginia Beach area after a bicycle accident for which she was not at fault. She had guardianship imposed upon her. She was an adult with Down syndrome. And all of a sudden, the guardians were putting in place choices that weren't Jenny's. And she was miserable. And so it's about her fight to get the guardianship removed. And throughout her court hearings, everyone kept saying, but Jenny can't make those decisions alone. But Jenny can't do that alone. And the whole argument that Jonathan Martinez, who was Jenny's lawyer, was making was, right, that's why we're giving her support. That's what supported decision making is. We're not asking her to do this alone. We're asking to work with Jenny to build a team of people who are going to help Jenny understand and make her choices. And so it's a really lovely story. The When Do I Want Support document is linked there. And then if you're a Virginia waiver user, our state Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Services is the state agency that oversees waiver. They have a full-time staff who works on supported decision-making. They drafted a supported decision-making agreement and related FAQ documents, tools for supporters on the documents, all those other kinds of things that I think are great, in part because they're written by Virginia government. So that as you are working on using state services, public services, et cetera, that kind of thing will be acknowledged and supported. But it certainly is a testament to Virginia's buy-in on this supported decision-making concept. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now and pivot toward questions. Feel free to keep them coming in at any time. Let's see. What if it's less about needing help making decisions, but rather implementing them? STM still applies, absolutely. And I was remiss in not really highlighting this. So when we talk about someone's supported decision-making plan, it may look like the person helping me with, education decisions, is my special education power of attorney. That's my mom. That's my whoever who's going to go with me. And also, what does that look like? It means she goes to meetings with me. It means every week we sit down and review my IEP goals and we say, did I get help here? If not, what do I ask for? Do I ask for another meeting? Do I send an email to my teacher? Do I ask to have a conversation with the principal? Whatever that looks like. So all along the continuum of what are my choices? How do I understand them? How do I make them? How do I implement them? Absolutely. Yes, that's a huge part of supported decision-making, building that team who is building your capacity all across the decision-making spectrum, which absolutely includes implementation. How many folks can one person have with a power of attorney? So we had a great conversation recently with Dana Trainum, who's an attorney with the Disability Law Center of Virginia. I referenced them as having those free online powers of attorney that I think are great. She said she really recommends having one or no more than two people. You don't want to end up in a situation where you have powers of attorney who have dueling opinions, one of whom is not available, those other kinds of things. If you have a power of attorney, that helper person who's going to go with you to financial meetings with your bank, to doctor's appointments, to special ed meetings, whatever that is, whatever realm you've given them. You want that to be someone who's accessible, who knows and understands you well, who's going to help you put forth those decisions. So it doesn't mean that that person is signing in lieu of you and taking away your rights. They're doing it with you the whole time. They can sign with you. But you also don't want 10 people being your power of attorney. You don't need 10 people showing up and doing that with you. You may have a supporting team of 10. So let's use education again as an example. You have a special education power of attorney. So mom, dad, sibling, whoever it is, still goes to IEP meetings with you and does all kinds of things. You may have other people on that list who have education expertise, have you expertise, have job and transition expertise, have whatever that is. People whom you talk with regularly, who may go to an IEP meeting and hold your hand, even though they're not the person who's ultimately helping you sign, those kinds of things. So you can build a team that's pretty big in one area, but you would really only have one or at most two people who were the actual powers of attorney. Virginia has options for what's called a general or durable power of attorney that really covers pretty much all areas of life, or you can farm it out into little chunks. You can have a special education power of attorney that only governs education, a financial power of attorney that only governs money, medical. I would say usually the general or durable option is great because then you got one document and it's often one person we want as our core do with person throughout all of those things, but you can do it in the way that makes sense to you. Do we have other questions? Give people another second if they're thinking about anything. I did want to say that one of the questions we get often is, well, what if we just try guardianship and then we decide we don't need it? Then can we step down to supported decision making? You can. I give the caution that putting guardianship in place, A, is expensive. I don't take that lightly. I would say $3,000 to $4,000 is a very standard average in Northern Virginia. It could be more or less. You're paying for the attorney's time by the hour. So if they spend more time talking with people, it'll be more. And that guardianship says we, the attorney, a special attorney that comes out from the court called the guardian ad litem. So now we're talking about two attorneys, and the judge and the person with the disability and the parents and the whoever have all been talked to and agreed this person doesn't have the ability to understand or make their choices. So we're taking that away. That's what guardianship means. And we're giving that authority to someone else. If you later want to go back and change that, you have to show that that person has somehow regained capacity, that what you said wasn't a possibility for them before, now is. Years ago, we were told often families would spend $10,000 or more trying to fight those legal battles, and you're still very much at the whim of a judge. Do they understand and agree with you? They don't have to. So it's not something I would recommend. We are seeing more people ultimately move away from guardianship towards supported decision making. Virginia passed a law this year, 2024, that says you can do a layperson's petition, like write a letter to the court, essentially asking for that change to be made instead of hiring attorneys to do it. So those are all options. It's easier to remove guardianship than it used to be, but it's not easy. And it's cheaper than it used to be, but it's not cheap. So it's not an option that I would go. Usually the best practices that national best practices, the National Guardianship Association, Virginia law, everyone recommends is eke up on the support scale if you need to. If you find that what you're doing isn't enough, add more. But don't start by going whole hog and trying to piecemeal yourself backwards. That doesn't tend to be very successful. Oh, about general or durable powers of attorney, just meaning that they are like, you can cover whole huge life areas. You could put all of someone's power of attorney biz in one document. And so you could say, for example, I feel like examples are so much easier. This gives the person authority to help with financial decisions. That includes they have to be my second signatory on all checks. I can't have a debit card. Abstract money is too difficult for me. Or I can only have a debit card and not physical checks, whatever that looks like, right? I have a maximum withdrawal of $500 a day, of $200 a day. My power of attorney is notified if there's a transaction over $100 that happens. That's not a regularly scheduled transaction, right? You can do all those kinds of things. And then you can go on within that same durable power of attorney and say, and in the medical realm, this person has the authority to jointly consent to surgeries and other medical procedures, to attend doctor's appointments, to be notified about test results, right? You can really spell out everything that you want your power of attorney to do and not do. Virginia gives a lot of leeway in terms of what you can put into a power of attorney document, in terms of how specific you can be. And at the end of the day, the power of attorney is signed by the person with a disability, the person they're appointing, And you can have it notarized. By law, you don't have to. Usually you can go to UPS for $5 or your bank for free and to get it notarized, and that gives it a little bit more heft. So I would recommend doing that. But if, let's say, 6 months down the road, you think, oh, you know what we should add in? XYZ accommodation or note. You can just do that. Just reprint the power of attorney, add that part in, you sign, person with the disability signs, notarize again, and it's very easy to change and to adapt. Sample powers of attorney, yes. So let me see actually if I can go online. And I have some examples that we can email out to folks. I wanted to see. I think they're just referenced in our online supported decision-making library because they aren't powers of attorney that we created. We don't have attorneys on staff. I steal lovingly the Disability Law Center of Virginia's public documents that are samples for powers of attorney. That supported decision-making book that I referenced gives a lot of very specific examples of power of attorney language. You can download a power of attorney from LegalZoom.com or like just general places on the internet. And edit it as much as you want, so long as it's legal, right? You can't say, and this person has the authority to rob a bank, obviously. So anything within the realm of law, you can kind of customize and put in a power of attorney of Virginia. So really, I would say stretch that document far and wide, customize it very specifically. Can you make an appointment if you have more questions? Yes, I will give some caveats. We get lots of people who say, I'm not sure what the best option is. I am terribly suited to help you with that choice because I'm never going to know your kid like you know your kid. I am never going to know how they understand and make choices, the real trajectory of how they have matured and grown in independence over the years. So I can talk to you about general principles and tools and options, but I really feel like parents and loved ones are the absolute experts in trying to figure out, is supported decision making an option for us? And what would that look like? It means we need help at every step. We need someone to go along with the person at every step. We need it to be this person that I'm going to say, okay, then put a power of attorney in place or put these other things in place, right? So yes, I can do up to like a 15-minute Zoom meeting or phone call with people, and don't ever hesitate to reach out for that. But in terms of deciding what the right path is, you are always going to be a better expert than me because you know the person with a disability better. Virginia law essentially says guardianship is there if we cannot make any accommodations, we can't put any levels of support in place that make it possible for this person to understand and make their choices. And if there's no way we can do that, we have no way to communicate with this individual that's effective and consistent, then yeah, guardianship's probably going to be necessary. But for just about anybody else, you can go other ways. Oh, this is a good one. How does supported decision making and special needs trust coalesce? So supported decision making, this concept, I'm going to get help to understand and make and implement my choices, says in all these realms of life, what tools do I need? So in the financial realm, the tool you may need is a special needs trust. That lets me save money, that lets me inherit money, that lets me pay bills, and that puts the onus on the special needs trust team to make sure that they're not jeopardizing my benefits or doing anything that causes issues or making sure they're in keeping with what the special needs trust plan says, right? If mom left money for this person to inherit, mom can says, I'm okay with my money being used for motorcycles, but no tattoos or whatever it is that you care about. So that puts the onus on them as opposed to the person with a disability. And then I'll speak for our special needs trust team and I'll say, if someone requests something that isn't reasonable or is going to jeopardize benefits eligibility or is going to cause other kinds of issues, we don't just say like, denied, good day to you. We say, okay, I see that this is what you want. You wanted a Ferrari. That's going to deplete your entire special needs trust. What I'm hearing is you want a mode of transportation. Maybe you even want to own your own vehicle. So let's talk about, do we need driver's license accommodations and a test to pass first? Can we look at used vehicles that feel sporty to you, right? What are the other kinds of ways that we can go about supporting this person? And so in that way, the special needs trust becomes part of the supported decision-making team. They are helping that person understand how and when they can use money. And it also gets family and friends out of the business of having to say, no, you can't spend your money on that, which can be a very uncomfortable place to be, especially for adult siblings, where we've seen that create a lot of tension. I don't see any other questions coming in. So again, as a reminder, the arcofnova.org resources, resource library, and that brings up an alphabetical menu. There, if you choose supported decision making, there is, goodness, pages and pages of options and resources and things to explore, and also anywhere that you are on the arcofnova.org. If you click the orange or yellow help rectangle in the upper right-hand corner, you can send me, Lucy, questions anytime, and I'm happy to get to them. Unless I'm out of the office, I'm usually pretty darn fast. So you can reply if you signed up for today's webinar live to just write back to me once I send out the reminder from the webinar, with the link and the slides and that kind of thing, and say if you have other questions, if you need to talk, those other kinds of things, anytime. Oh, I won't say your name because it's being recorded, but you're just the bestest family. Thank you all so much for being here. I look forward to hearing from you all. We love to hear success stories, feedback, good or negative, about what you need in the future. This is just such an incredibly important tool, and it is very exciting to see Virginia, 25 years ago, was on the forefront of this, and now kind of really still leading the way across the country in how this is implemented. It's just a tremendous tool for people with disabilities and for families. Thank you all, and have a great day.